Religious institutions have more than their fair share of abuse. This is an unfortunate reality and a source of heavy criticism and outrage for the institutions involved and for religion in general. Atheists often blame religion as the reason for these horrors, claiming we don't see the same scale and level of abuse outside of religious communities, and arguing that this is because religious ideas are harmful to society. The scale and degree of abuse seen in religious institutions certainly adds weight to this argument, but secular institutions and communities are no strangers to abuse either. For the purposes of this video, we'll leave it as an open question whether secular or religious communities have a worse track record. What I want to explore instead are the causes of this sad reality. There are various sociological and psychological factors that cause or create fertile grounds for abuse to appear. There's no denying that human failings play a major role in these occurrences, but whether religion is a major negative influence is hotly contested. There are at least a few factors unique to religious communities that contribute to abuse, so the atheists at least have some valid criticisms. But we need to consider if these elements are inherent features of religion or if they are corruptions of it. Firstly, let's unpack what we were talking about when we say abuse. I'm not using this term lightly. Predominantly, we're referring to the sexual exploitation of children, one of the most heinous acts that can be committed, and one that religious institutions are sadly not immune to. But the scope of abuse extends beyond this particular horror. It encompasses physical abuse such as domestic violence, which can sometimes be swept under the rug when the perpetrator is a person of standing within the community. It includes psychological abuse where congregants or family members are manipulated or terrorized under the guise of religious authority. Financial exploitation also rears its ugly head when leaders take advantage of their position to coerce donations or mismanage funds for personal gain. And then there is emotional abuse, such as shunning or instilling excessive fear, tactics that can fracture families and individuals. Each of these abuses betrays the sacred trust placed in those who lead and serve within these institutions. They not only devastate the immediate victims, but also tarnish the very mission these communities profess to uphold. This is a subject that is especially dear to my heart because it takes something I have so much love and appreciation for and poisons it. The sacred spaces that should serve as sanctuaries of peace and growth are instead tarnished by acts of cruelty and deceit. It's a desecration of everything these institutions are meant to uphold. Instead of fostering virtue, compassion, and community, they have, in some tragic instances, become the very antithesis of these lofty ideals. There are three main factors which I think explain the prevalence of abuse in religious communities and institutions. They are too much trust in leaders and in the institution, repression of desires leading to perverted attempts at satisfaction, and aversion of the legal system. I think the main factors are misplaced trust and sheltering perpetrators from the legal system. Repression explains why the perpetrators might end up committing these crimes, but the reality is there are always some devious people who, if left unchecked, would commit heinous acts. It's the factors that result in the guards being asleep at the wheel that are the more important ones to highlight, as they create vulnerabilities that can be exploited by those with malicious intent. Albert Einstein once profoundly stated, "The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything." This sentiment resonates with me deeply, particularly when considering the critiques levied by atheists on the issue of religious dogmatism. They criticize religion for fostering a kind of dogmatism that leads to standing idly by while abuse unfolds, enabling it to continue and allowing perpetrators to go unpunished. Figures such as Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens were motivated in opposition to this exact kind of issue, and rightly so. While I disagree with their execution and how far they go with their criticisms of religion, I do think their motivations are noble and inspired in opposition to some very insidious elements. I think of dogmatism as the shutting down of rational faculties and switching into a kind of blind groupthink. Instead of embracing authentic thoughts and experiences, religious adherents may switch into a mindset focused on what they think they should feel and ignoring their genuine reactions and emotions. While this may start innocently, as this mindset deepens and becomes entrenched, there's a significant atrophy of authentic, rational, and emotional faculties that can become dangerously myopic. Perhaps nothing illustrates the harm of this atrophy of authenticity more than the shielding of sexual predators from the justice system. Anyone with a functioning moral compass would insist on passing such criminals through the criminal justice system. The avoidance of the legal system disregards the evolution of Western jurisprudence, which has, over thousands of years, honed methods for curbing malevolence through the modern justice system. To sidestep this institution is to reinvent the wheel needlessly and not without consequence. Our legal systems are the culmination of centuries of societal learning about how to keep malevolence at bay. To ignore them is to flirt with disaster. Sure, it's not a perfect system, but it's the best we have. It's often thought that a leader who is accused of abuse should be spared the courts due to them being spiritually advanced or exalted in some way. The ideas behind this vary based on the religion and the particular case. It can be seen as an offense to cause someone spiritually advanced to suffer punishment or ill reputation. The main issue with this is it prioritizes perpetrators over victims. Any religious ideology that throws its vulnerable members to the curb is in direct violation of the most basic principles of human decency. Protecting women and children from abuse comes before any lofty ideals about who is and isn't spiritually advanced. Sure, the accusations might be false, but that's for the courts to decide, not some inexperienced and sentimental churchgoers. So far, I've mostly just covered the importance of the justice system. Now I'll speak a bit more about misplaced trust. Religious adherents are prone to thinking they are in a community of morally upstanding individuals. This can cause them to drop their guard and expose their children to situations they would not otherwise. Boarding schools are one way this kind of misplaced trust has resulted in horrendous abuse. This misplaced trust can also result in people not believing the reports of victims. I'm not saying we should always believe the victim. What I'm saying is we should not be naive. We should not think that because someone is an upstanding member of the society, that they are incapable of committing such crimes. Repressed desires, or what some might call false renunciation, describe scenarios where internal urges denied by strict self-imposed or institutional rules seek an outlet in a way that can be unhealthy or harmful. A simple example of this is a person following a very strict diet and being unable to keep up with it, resulting in them binging on unhealthy foods, exhibiting more extreme behavior than if they had followed a balanced approach, allowing for moderation. This concept gains complexity when applied to the context of sexual behavior, particularly regarding the contentious idea that celibacy might contribute to increased rates of sexual abuse. The psychology behind repressed desires suggests that when natural urges are suppressed without a healthy outlet, they might manifest in destructive ways. This is not to say that celibacy directly leads to abusive behaviors, but rather that in some cases the lack of a healthy framework for understanding and expressing sexuality can contribute to pathological expressions. Instead of fostering healthy consensual relationships, an environment of strict prohibition might inadvertently contribute to the very issues it seeks to avoid. I'd like to finish by pointing out that the causal elements I highlighted here are not exclusive to religious communities. Political ideologies are fully capable of swallowing people into blind dogmatism, leading to authenticity atrophy with all sorts of bad consequences. This has become so apparent in recent years that many of the atheists who were leading the charge against religion 10 years ago have now shifted their sights to various political ideologies. If you couldn't tell already, I was reading off a teleprompter. This is my first video on this channel done reading a script off a teleprompter, so It may have sounded a bit robotic. I spent a fair bit of work on that script and it's quite a sensitive subject, so being able to do it scripted made it a lot easier. Thank you for the view, it means a lot, and if you like this sort of stuff, be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hare Krishna.